Hello, good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to deliver the presentation in this symposium. Thank you for the conference organization, especially the chairs who have kindly support the symposium on teaching and learning during and after the pandemic. I'm Hongjian, currently teaching in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the National University of Singapore. So the title is that I want to share hybrid lab class for structural concrete design. This is the outline for my presentation. I will give a very short introduction of this module and then followed by a methodology, what innovation has been conducted to this module, especially in this lab class. Then I'm going to introduce to present some of the results in the quantitative and in qualitative way. Then the final part, the last part is some conclusion or some lessons that I have learned through this innovation. So this is a quick introduction. In engineering education, laboratory experience is very critical to students' learning process. And this applies to most of the areas of learning, whether it is in science, engineering, architecture, or design, or social science. A meaningful or very helpful lab class requires a lot of resources such as space, equipment, planning, and manpower. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19, a lot of changes has been brought to the higher education, especially about the lab class, because many safety regulations have been imposed to the workshops or to the laboratories. So we cannot conduct the laboratory class or activities as usual. So this is why I say the COVID-19 has brought a lot of challenges. However, at the same time, we can realize that actually a lot of opportunities have been brought by this COVID-19, which is beyond our expectation. Today, I want to share my experience on the conducting the hybrid lab class. So the lab class is a compulsory element in the CE3165 Structural Concrete Design. And this is a core module for civil engineering students when they are the third year student. And the main purpose of this laboratory work is to elaborate the bending behaviors of the reinforced beams with respect to cracking, deflection, strength, and ductility. The learning mode of this module before the pandemic is always the physical lecture and tutorials plus physical lab class. In the year when the 2020, when the COVID-19 outbreak, the learning mode has changed to online lecture and online tutorials and online lab class. This is because Singapore has experienced the circuit breaker period, so we cannot go to the lab as usual. And then last year in 2021, the learning mode changed again. We moved to online lecture and tutorials, but we moved to the hybrid lab class because in 2021, the lab is open to undergraduate lab class, but there is a maximum number of students who can go to the lab class at the same time. So that's why we can bring 5 students maximally, and then all the rest of the students will attend the online platform, which is Zoom used in my module. Last year, about 134 students were enrolled in this module. And what we did is we divide the whole cohort into 6 groups. So that means around 20 to 23 students in each group. And for each group, maximally 5 students are allowed to go and observe in the lab physically. And then the rest students attend the live streaming via Zoom. Okay, so who can attend the on-site lab class is first come, first reserved principle. So I gave you some photos to elaborate how the lab class was conducted before. So this photo on the left, it shows a very typical lab class test setup. Then this photo shows about 4 years ago how Prof. Tang Jianghui conducted the lab class. You see, this is only half of the students. The other half of students stand on the other side of the beam. And what we did this year is that we provide a hybrid lab class. So 5 students go to the lab and they were going to really see and participate in the measurement of the lab class, while we have 1 teaching assistant and 1 lab technician. They will help and assist the lab class on site. As the facilitator, I will stay online in my office. So I will play the role as a moderator. I will introduce the lab class to the students both online and on site. So students will understand the purpose of coming to this lab class and what they are going to observe and learn during the whole lab session. So this is, you can see, we provided 2 cameras. And during the lab class, we are going to introduce students different equipments. For example, this is the microscope. Students were going to use the microscope to see the cracking. From this view, the students online can see very clearly the readings of the gauge. Students can see the real life or the real-time data collection, as well as you can see some plottings. And these plottings were done by myself, because during the lab class, I'm going to elaborate a lot of mechanisms that help students understand what happens at different stages. While sometimes it's very dry or draggy for students online, so I have attempted to create a few poll everywhere questions for the online students, as well as for students online on site. So in this way, I can engage students in the online environment. And at the end of the lab class, I will also use this QR code, which is linked with a Google form. So students can give me their feedback at the end, right after the each lab class session. Now I'm going to show some results or feedback from the students. There are 3 elements I want to show. The first one is the lab class report grading. The second one is the informal feedback, which I collected after each lab class session. The last part is the formal student feedback at the semester end. This is the curve of the grading. You can see we have about 131 students submission of the lab report. There are 3 students did not submit the lab report. This is not because of this, due to other reasons. Okay, so that's why we have 3 students whose mark is 0. While for the rest, you can see this distribution. Only 6 students out of the 131 get mark less than 50 here and here. While majority of the students are doing very well, you can see the average is 73.1 out of 100, and the standard deviation is 16.3. Then let's take a look at the students' feedback. I first show the informal student feedback at the lab class session. About 68 students participated in the feedback. In the feedback, I have 4 questions. The first question is, do you really think this hybrid lab class helps your understanding or not? You can see from the response, about 68%, they said, oh yes, this hybrid lab class really help, and to a very much extent. About 29 students think it helps, but very limited. And very minimum student mentioned actually this hybrid lab class does not help their understanding. The second question in the informal feedback is which learning mode do you prefer most for future lab classes? So surprisingly, about 54 students said they prefer hybrid, and 39 students said, okay, they prefer face-to-face. 7% says they prefer virtual one. Okay, so majority are still very happy with this hybrid lab class, while some students do prefer the face-to-face lab class. Then the third question I have for the students is I will ask them to leave any comments. What is their overall experience of the lab class? So some students give very positive response. For example, they say the experience is very good, maybe even better than physical lab, because nobody is blocking the view and we can hear the professor's explanation clearly without background noise. Positive, because the live explanation by prof while looking at the live demonstration of the lab helps make understanding easier. The video was clear enough, and the comments that you gave explaining very actively, every activity is very useful. It is good. We still see the concrete crack. It almost feels that we are part of the experiment. It was definitely more enriching than a recorded lab session. I think it was really good and I learned a lot. It was good enough to view and learn the behavior of the beam. And we also ask students any feedback they want to give us so that we can improve for future. So a lot of students gave us good explanations, good comments. So we accept these comments and do the improvement right after the comments. So for example, some students that maybe mentioned, maybe we can provide multiple camera angles. Yes, we do that immediately. So we provide at least 2 cameras after the first lab session. And some students comment that it was comfortable at home, but the certain stuff not very clear and draggy. So for future hybrid learning in the lab class, we are going to make the lab class concise and simple, as well as time efficient. And at the end of the semester, US student also give me formal student back to the module, to my teaching, and to the lab TA. So some comments are very good and positive. One student said the real life lab session was very fun, and they is going to witness how the beam feels, and was exciting because we were because all the lab classes were all virtual last semester. Some students appreciate my effort in arranging the lab session to enhance the learning, and some students said I gave real-time explanation during the lab class, allowing for an understanding what is happening. I think the hybrid lab class allows the safe distancing for workplace, such as a lab in my university. And the hybrid lab class has catered the students with different needs. Some students are still in overseas. They are not on campus. They have the disability to come on campus, or they live very far from the campus. So different students have different needs. But this hybrid lab class can cater the students with different needs. Most of the students give us very positive feedback. So I'm very happy that the learning objectives of this lab class have been met. Of course, there are some areas that we need to improve. At this last slide, I want to acknowledge the great helps from my TA and the lab staff, as well as the technical support from the structural engineering laboratory and the support from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. With that, I want to end my presentation. Thank you for your listening, and I look forward to hearing your comments and questions, if any. Thank you so much.